Wow, so it's been 3 days of pretty much non-stop action in the British fight scene in terms of fights being announced. So a few days ago we had Frank Warren announced World War III, which has 3 world title fights on the bill, headlined by Andy Lee versus Saunders. Yesterday we had Frankie Gavin versus Sam Eggington announced. Big fight for Birmingham. I'll probably do a video on that. I know there's probably a bit less interest on Frankie Gavin, Sam Eggington, but I want to cover it, so I'll do a video on that. And today we have got Callum Smith versus Rocky Fielding announced. So I think this is continuing a theme that we're seeing with Matchroom, where the way they're going about their business at present is they have the pay-per-view model, which we all know about. You know, and they'll put the superstars on the pay-per-view model and the big fights and the international fights. And then, apart from that, what they like to do seems to be focus on regions. So, for example, Birmingham, an all-Birmingham fight. Eggington versus Gavin with Yafai, with Macklin on the undercard. I think their kind of idea is that their core non-pay-per-view business will be selling tickets to local fans, having big domestic rivalries, and we see that with the likes of Tommy Coyle, Luke Campbell. We're seeing it again here with Callum Smith, Rocky Fielding. I guess the one difference is whilst Coyle, Campbell and Eggington, Gavin are possibly fights that are largely of interest in their locality, I think it's fair to say that Callum Smith versus Rocky Fielding is a bigger matchup than that, and is one that is going to generate and inspire more interest. You know, these are 2 guys with established careers. They're both undefeated, and at times they've both looked very, very good on their way up. So it's, you know, it's an interesting class. It's not like Gavin versus Eggington, where both guys have got losses on their records. You know, it looks, to my eye at least, that neither guy is going to make it at the very top level. Or it's not like you know, Gavin Eggington, Coyle Campbell, where it's so obvious who's going to win. For me, this is an interesting matchup. You've got 2 guys here. I view this as a 50-50 fight. I know Callum Smith will undoubtedly be a strong favourite, but I view this as a very, very close matchup. And they're both undefeated. Now, I'm not one of these guys who's desperate to have an undefeated fighter and, you know, protecting the O and all of that stuff. What I would say is both of these guys are undefeated, and in a good way. You know, you could see both of these guys having a real future in the sport. It wouldn't surprise me to see these guys fighting for world titles. It wouldn't actually surprise me to see one of these guys going on to win some version of a world title. So that's why this is a kind of standout fight. That's why I've wanted to come to it first. And, you know, fair play to everyone involved for making the fight. You know, I wonder, with Matchroom not having the busiest year with the likes of Carl Frotz and Kell Brook, I wonder if that's sparked them to want to make this fight. I also wonder if, you know, Eddie Hearn's increasingly aware of needing to put on big fights and big earning fights for his team, given the approaches from Al Heyman, who's recently snapped up managerial deals for Lee Selby, for James DeGale, etc. Either way, you know, it's good news for us, the fight fans. I'm very much looking forward to this one. And I'm slightly surprised they put Callum Smith in with Rocky Fielding, because, you know, Rocky Fielding's not a very fashionable fighter. He's not very well known. He's probably one of the most underrated fighters out there. Whereas Callum Smith is this, you know, casual fan idol, you know, obviously like the golden child of Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, and clearly someone who is, you know, is targeted for the very, very top of the sport. I think it's fair to say, if you look back at Callum Smith's resume, he hasn't really been in a fight which he hasn't been a strong favourite in. Let's phrase it that way. There's never been a fight before where the bookmakers would have the odds remotely close to evens, in my opinion. This is a real step up for Callum Smith, and in my opinion, it is quite a risk, because losing to Rocky Fielding, you know, if that were to happen, I mean, Rocky isn't like, it's not like losing to James DeGale. It's not like saying, okay, we lost to someone who's at the very top of the sport, we lost to an established world champion, etc. Losing to Rocky Fielding would be a major setback. Rocky doesn't have that kind of superstardom and invincibility about him just yet. So it would be a very painful loss for everyone involved if Callum Smith was to lose. And that's why I applaud the fight, because I really do see this as a close matchup. You know, I'll talk more in detail about the fight as we get closer and closer and closer. You know, this video is more just to kind of announce on my channel that it's actually happening. But what I will say, just briefly, and I won't go into it in too much detail, is I have major concerns about Callum Smith as a prospect. I view him as very robotic. I think he's only got one mode. You know, there's no variation to Callum Smith's game. There's no versatility to his game. He's not a guy like Tyson Fury or James DeGale, who has many different strings to his bow. You know, he's not someone who's going to mix it up from the outside, come on the inside, you know, throw to the head, throw to the body, jab his way in, then throw hooks, then throw uppercuts. He's not a fully rounded fighter, in my opinion. For me, Callum Smith is a guy who, well, let me first say, I think he's got somewhat overrated power. He punches very hard to the body. His power to the head, I'm not convinced of it being elite level just yet. Now, as I say, he punches very well to the body, and you know, you can stop people at the elite level by body shots. I mean, look at Gennady Golovkin, for example. But typically, when the KOs come at the top of the sport, it's KOs to the head rather than KOs to the body. And whilst Callum Smith is an extremely effective body puncher, whilst he's extremely effective with a long 1-2 from range, I question how he's going to react if someone brings the fight to him on the inside. If someone puts Callum Smith on his back foot, I question how defensively sound he is. You know, Christopher Brasse, who is an awkward guy, a durable guy, you know, possibly highlighted previous concerns that I'd had, that he's quite Route 1 Callum Smith. He's got one mode. He's like a light switch. You turn him on and he's Callum Smith. You turn him off and he's not. He doesn't surprise you. He's quite easy to read. He's quite predictable. What he does very well. But I don't see him having good lateral movement. I don't see him having good head movement. I don't see him defensively. I don't see him on his back foot. You know, for me, a really elite level fighter has more attributes, more elements to their game than Callum Smith. And I think he's been overrated. I think he's been overrated because he's viewed as being this big puncher. He's been overrated because he's got the might of Sky, Eddie Hearn behind him. And I think he is beatable. Now, conversely, Rocky Fielding is a guy I feel is dramatically underrated. You know, Rocky Fielding for me is a really big puncher. Now, I know the Brian Vera fight ended in questionable circumstances, but you look at the fight before that he was in, you look at, I mean, let's talk Brian Vera fight. Even though that the knockout there was dodgy, let's be honest, Rocky Fielding had Vera in all sorts of trouble. Much more trouble than Julio Cesar Chavez had him. For me, Fielding's improving. And one thing I really like about Fielding, not just his punching power, is this guy has really improved timing. You know, he knows when to throw a punch. He picks his shots very well. For someone like Callum Smith, who possibly is slightly predictable, possibly doesn't have the best head movement, possibly is defensively open, possibly isn't the strongest on his back foot, I think Rocky Fielding may be able to time Callum Smith. And we've never really seen Callum Smith in and getting hit and having the fight taken to him by someone with the punch power of Rocky Fielding. They're both big super middleweights. Both of them will probably end up at light heavyweight. And I don't think Callum Smith will enjoy as much of a size advantage as he typically does in his fights. So I see this as a real tight matchup. I really do. Very intriguing. Really looking forward to this. I could see this being one that builds and builds and builds, and you know, by the time we get to the fight, this being a real big occurrence. You know, I'm very much looking forward to this fight indeed, and you know, fair play to Hearn, Matchroom for making it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you picking Rocky? Are you picking Callum Smith? Am I being hard on Callum? Am I being too complimentary on Rocky Fielding? I do see it as a 50-50 fight. Neither guy winning would overly surprise me, but I'm picking Rocky Fielding. Thanks for watching.